Preface of William the Conqueror. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. William the Conqueror by Jacob Abbott. Preface. In selecting the subjects for the successive volumes of this series, it has been the object of the author to look for the names of those great personages whose histories constitute useful and not merely entertaining knowledge. There are certain names which are familiar as names to all mankind, and every person who seeks for any degree of mental cultivation feels desirous of informing himself of the leading outlines of their history, that he may know in brief what it was in their characters or their doings which has given them so widely extended a fame. This knowledge, which it seems incumbent on every one to obtain in respect to such personages as Hannibal, Alexander, Caesar, Cleopatra, Darius, Xerxes, Alfred, William the Conqueror, Queen Elizabeth, and Mary Queen of Scots, it is the design and object of these volumes to communicate in a faithful and at the same time, if possible, in an attractive manner. Consequently, great historical names alone are selected, and it has been the writer's aim to present the prominent and leading traits in their characters, and all the important events in their lives, in a bold and free manner, and yet in the plain and simple language which is so obviously required in works which aim at permanent and practical usefulness. Chapter 1. Normandy. One of those great events in English history which occur at distant intervals, and form, respectively, a sort of bound or landmark to which all other events preceding or following them for centuries are referred, is what is called the Norman Conquest. The Norman Conquest was, in fact, the accession of William, Duke of Normandy, to the English throne. This accession was not altogether a matter of military force, for William claimed a right to the throne, which, if not altogether perfect, was, as he maintained, at any rate superior to that of the prince against whom he contended. The rightfulness of his claim was, however, a matter of little consequence, except so far as the moral influence of it aided him in gaining possession. The right to rule was, in those days, rather more openly and nakedly, though not much more really, than it is now, the right of the strongest. Normandy, William's native land, is a very rich and beautiful province in the north of France. It lies, as will be seen upon the map, on the coast of France adjoining the English Channel. The channel is here irregular in form, but may be, perhaps on the average, 100 miles wide. The line of coast on the southern side of the channel, which forms of course the northern border of Normandy, is a range of cliffs which are almost perpendicular towards the sea, and which frown forbiddingly upon every ship that sails along the shore. Here and there, it's true, a river opens a passage for itself among these cliffs from the interior, and these river mouths would form harbours into which ships might enter from the offing, were it not that the northwestern winds prevail so generally, and drive such a continual swell of rolling surges in upon the shore, that they choke up all these estuary openings, as well as every natural indentation of the land, with shoals and bars of sand and shingle. The reverse is the case with the northern, or English shore of this famous channel. There the harbours formed by the mouths of the rivers, or by the sinuosities of the shore, are open and accessible, and at the same time sheltered from the winds and the sea. Thus, while the northern or English shore has been, for many centuries, all the time enticing the seamen in and out over the calm, deep, and sheltered waters which there penetrate the land, the southern side has been an almost impassable barrier, consisting of a long line of frowning cliffs, with every opening through it choked with shoals and sandbanks, and guarded by the rolling and tumbling of surges which scarcely ever rest. It's a great measure owing to these great physical differences between the two shores, that the people who live upon the one side, though of the same stock and origin with those who live upon the other, have become so vastly superior to them in respect to naval exploits and power. They are really of the same stock and origin, since both England and the northern part of France were overrun and settled by what is called the Scandinavian race, that is, people from Norway, Denmark, and other countries on the Baltic. These people were called the Norsemen in the histories of those times. Those who landed in England are generally termed Danes, though but a small portion of them came really from Denmark. They were all, however, of the same parent stock, and possessed the same qualities of courage, energy, and fearless love of adventure and of danger which distinguish their descendants at the present day. They came down in those early times in great military hordes, and in fleets of piratical ships, through the German Ocean and the various British seas, braving every hardship and every imaginable danger, to find new regions to dwell in, more genial and fertile and rich than their own native northern climes. In these days they evince the same energy, and endure equal privations and hardships in hunting whales in the Pacific Ocean, in overrunning India and seizing its sources of wealth and power, or in sallying forth, whole fleets of adventurers at a time, to go more than half round the globe, to dig for gold in California. The times and circumstances have changed, but the race and spirit are the same. Normandy takes its name from the Norsemen. It was the province of France which the Norsemen made peculiarly their own. They gained access to it from the sea by the river Seine, which, as will be seen from the map, flows, as it were, through the heart of the country. The lower part of this river, and the sea around its mouth, are much choked up with sand and gravel, which the waves have been for ages washing in. Their incessant industry would result in closing up the passage entirely, were it not that the waters of the river must have an outlet, and thus the current, setting outward, wages perpetual war with the surf and surges which are continually breaking in. The expeditions of the Norsemen, however, found their way through all these obstructions. They ascended the river with their ships, and finally gained a permanent settlement in the country. They had occupied the country for some centuries at the time when our story begins, the province being governed by a line of princes, almost, if not quite, independent sovereigns, called the Dukes of Normandy. The first Duke of Normandy, and the founder of the line, the chieftain who originally invaded and conquered the country, was a wild and half-savage hero from the north named Rollo. He is often in history called Rollo the Dane. Norway was his native land. He was a chieftain by birth there, and being of a wild and adventurous disposition, he collected a band of followers, and committed with them so many piracies and robberies, that at length the king of the country expelled him. Rollo seems not to have considered this banishment as any very great calamity, since, far from interrupting his career of piracy and plunder, it only widened the field on which he was to pursue it. He accordingly increased the equipment and the force of his fleet, enlisted more followers, and set sail across the northern part of the German Ocean towards the British shores. Off the northwestern coast of Scotland there are some groups of mountainous and gloomy islands, which have been, in many different periods of the world, the refuge of fugitives and outlaws. Rollo made these islands his rendezvous now, and he found collected there many other similar spirits who had fled to these lonely retreats, some on account of political disturbances in which they had been involved, and some on account of their crimes. Rollo's impetuous, ardent, and self-confident character inspired them with new energy and zeal. They gathered around him as their leader. Finding his strength thus increasing, he formed a scheme of concentrating